Maize, chibage, umumbo. The average yield a farmer should expect on 1 hectare is 7 to 19 tons. But why is it not all farmers are achieving this yield? You want to know why? Let me get my book. There are 7 secrets to achieving maximum yields in maize production. 1. Good land preparation. 2. Timing. 3. The right variety. 4. A good fertilizer regime that's determined by your soil analysis. 5. Weed control. Let's start with the basics. Land preparation. Masora, mandi yomurimi. Weeds, the farmer's foe. Ukula, isita somlimi. If weeds are not properly dealt with, they can be responsible for 40 to 60% loss of your maximum yield. Let me explain. Suppose your potential yield was 10 tons. You could end up harvesting 4 tons, or at best 6 tons, all because of poor weed control. That's roughly half your yield lost. In money terms, potentially you could be losing $1,200 to $1,800 per hectare. In a later part of the program, we will also discuss the various ways to control weeds. When your land has been cleared of weeds, mark your lines as shown, 75 centimeters by 60 centimeters. If your maize is not adequately spaced, it will grow tall and thin and you will not get the optimum yield. You can use 2 markers, one marker measured out to 60 centimeters and the other to 75 centimeters. An alternative method is to use a fishing line and 2 pegs, but the marker method is quicker and more accurate. If you do not have a line marker tool, you can use an ordinary Y-shaped branch so long as it's cut to 75 centimeters and the other to 60 centimeters. Next, dig your planting stations where the lines intersect. Follow through with cap number 5 lime and cap number 8 high analysis compound D. For the best results, get your soil tested and follow the suggested lime and fertilizer quantities as instructed by the soil analysis results. Liming improves the soil structure and pH level. It enables fertilizer uptake by the crop. Cover the basal fertilizer and lime with a layer of soil. This prevents fertilizer burn on the seed. Evenly space your maize seed in the planting station and cover the seed. Next, add your mulching. This locks in moisture when it rains and also helps control weed growth.
One mistake that people make when they are growing maize is the issue of soil fertility. There are several aspects that I need, maybe one or two aspects that I need to talk about in relation to soil fertility. The first one is to do with the pH of the soil and therefore the requirement to lime. Most people, they just want to use fertilizer. They grow their crop, they grow their maize without liming the soil. Yeah, you will see that your crop will germinate, your crop will look, but it will not grow as optimally as it should, because lime raises the pH of the soil. And when the pH is right, then the nutrients in the soil are available to the crop and they'll be used very efficiently. You can apply your fertilizer, but most of those nutrients in the fertilizer will be locked up within the soil if the pH is not right. But when you lime, you bring the pH to a level where the crop can extract the fertilizer from the soil. The majority of the fertilizer then grows into the crop, and that increases the yield level of the maize or the crop that you have grown. So it's a very important aspect of maize farming to have your soil pH right. And how you can have that pH right, because lime, you don't just apply lime. You need to have your soil tested. Take a soil sample, get it to the laboratory, to the government analyst laboratory in Harare or wherever the soil can be analyzed. The agronomist there will give you a recommendation of how much lime to apply to correct the pH of your soil. So that is very important to do. The second thing that is related to soil fertility is the issue of basal fertilizer application, the NPK, like compound D. That fertilizer, the recommendation is that it must be applied at planting. But you find that most people, they first of all plant their maize because they are fearful that the maize might not germinate, and therefore when they use the fertilizer, it will go to waste. But the thing is, if you do everything right and your germination is right, your crop, when it germinates, it needs those nutrients right at the time of germination. And again, the basal fertilizer contains nutrients like phosphorus, like potassium, that are not mobile in the soil. They need to be within the soil so that they can promote development of roots. When the young plant is germinating, the roots go towards the nutrients, the phosphorus, the fertilizer, in order to get. Now the mistake is when you apply it on top on the ground, what you get the benefit of is the nitrogen in that fertilizer, because when it rains, that nitrogen sinks and it can be taken up by the plants. But the phosphorus and the potassium, it is not right where the roots need it, because it has to be at the root zone. That's where the plants can take it, and if it is not there, the plants will get the benefit of the nitrogen and other nutrients that are soluble in water, that can dissolve in water and therefore can sink with the water to where the plants are actually taking those nutrients from the soil. But with other nutrients, more importantly like phosphorus and potassium, you will be wasting it if you apply that basal fertilizer or compound D after germination, because it's not where it should be required. The next mistake that people also do when growing maize is related to the timing. You find people planting maize into December, mid-December, sometimes January, or even mid-January. Yes, they can plant and it can germinate and they can see, but the yield is not what it's supposed to be. You need to be very timeous when you are growing maize. Maize is a crop that needs to be grown with the first rains, the first effective rains. And scientists have actually proved and shown that after 25 November, you are losing about 250 kilograms of grain per hectare for every day that you delay planting after 25 November. So, as much as is possible, try to plant your maize with the first effective rains that fall before 25 November in most areas. However, in some places, rainfall can come after 25 November. That's not your problem, that's not the farmer's problem. But whatever the case, the first effective rains, please try and utilize those for planting. It means all the land preparation, everything that needs to be done before planting will need to be done, and the farmer should then just be waiting for the first effective rains. And the first effective rains, we are talking about rainfall that is between 5 to 10 millimeters. Anything less than that will not promote germination. So when it rains effectively, when it's enough, then you can plant your crop. And after that, so that maize, when it is young, it needs a combination of moisture and heat and the length of the day. So in December, especially say after 21 December, the length of the day begins to shorten progressively until winter, and your maize crop will not actually have benefited from the long days that come before 21 December. So it's very important for the time of planting. That's another mistake that most people are making, most farmers are making. The other issue is to do with plant spacing. With maize, you need to get a population of around 45,000 plants per hectare. But you move around, you see some farmers, they plant maize like they are planting groundnuts. That is, you look at the field, the maize is planted like groundnuts, meaning it's very close together. They think we are trying to utilize all the land, and every piece of ground, every square inch, there's got to be a plant. There's a problem in that, because the plants need space. They will compete against each other for air, they will compete against each other for nutrients in the soil, and you find that they will grow tall and slender. And when they fruit, the cob is very small and not vigorous. So it's not okay. The proper planting for maize, I think what is recommended by extension services and agronomists, is where you grow your maize inter-row spacing like 75 centimeters, and then within row spacing like 60 centimeters, and you grow 2 plants per station. That's one of the plant spacings that you can do to achieve the correct plant population per hectare. You could also do 90 centimeters inter-row spacing and about 20 centimeters within row spacing. So as long as you can achieve the right plant density within the field, then you can have your yield right. So people sometimes want to overdo that. Your eyes will be very pleased to see the plants growing, but they are competing against each other, and you won't be getting good reward for your labor.
Today we are in Marindera for a little field visit to see how the barren pivot is performing. So behind me we have maize and tobacco, watermelons, and I'm very happy with the progress in the crop. Basically the pivot uses a little 2 horsepower submersible pump. Everything behind me is run on solar. So even if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can still have this set up and still be able to pay it off within a season. So we are on the 2nd of December and the maize behind me has done very well. I think if we had different climate and we didn't have this pivot, it wouldn't be as developed as it is right now. The nice thing about this is that they've introduced a water tank. And in this water tank they are planning on putting fish in order to harvest the nitrogen to put onto the circles, which is a brilliant idea in terms of organic fertilization. This model is the future of farming in Zimbabwe. It's made in Zimbabwe, which is a big plus. And I feel that, we could use this anywhere in the world.
So let's talk about weed control management. We can do it in two ways: manually, where we use our hose, or chemically, where we use our herbicides. What is a herbicide? A herbicide is a chemical we use to control weeds in our fields for different crops. Today, we're going to talk about selective and non-selective herbicides in maize production.
Right, there are different types of weed control. It depends on which crop you are growing. Right, first of all, there are herbicides that you use when you're growing crops. There are herbicides like, we call them pre-emergence herbicides, the ones that you apply to the soil soon after planting before the crop emerges. We are looking at an example is glyphosate. Glyphosate, when you apply it soon after planting, everything that is green and everything that is emerging, it will kill off. But then the soil will also still have some seed of weeds in it after you have applied the herbicide. So after your crop has emerged, you also find that a few weeks or some time after that, some weeds begin to emerge, and you also need to control, because weed control is very key. The weeds will compete with your crops for water, the weeds will compete with your crops for the nutrients, for the fertilizer, and you want to avoid that. So after the crop emerges, you then use selective herbicides that are appropriate for the crop that we've grown. Like for maize, there are so many appropriate herbicides, like Stellar Star is one of them, and there are many others. These ones are selective herbicides which can be applied, we call it post-emergence, meaning after the crop has germinated, after the crop is visible, it's growing in the field, but you still find some weeds that are in there and you want to clean them but leave the crop of interest. If it is maize, for instance, you want to eliminate everything else that is not maize. So you use a selective herbicide that is selective, it kills all the other weeds and leaves maize.
For selective post-emergence herbicides in maize, there are chemicals like dicamba. Dicamba is mainly for broadleaf weeds in maize. Broadleaf weeds like your blackjack, tsine, pigweed, bonongwe. We also have for shamba grass, also known as vave. We can use selective post-emergence herbicides like nicosulfuron, also known as Excellent. We also have for nut sedges, yellow and purple nut sedges, also known as pende, ondave. We have halosulfuron. We also have post-emergence herbicides for grasses like Stellar Star, which will take care of coach grass, also known as tangads. We also have atrazine. Let's talk about atrazine. It's a good pre- and post-emergence herbicide, mainly for broadleaf weeds. For farmers who practice crop rotation with broadleaf crops like groundnuts, sugar beans, or soya beans, atrazine is not for you. Why? Atrazine has a residual effect, meaning this chemical inogara menu for about 12 months, and you will not be able to do your crop rotation with these broadleaf weeds because they will not grow well.
The other issue is for weed control. I think that is very important. I think we need to emphasize the importance of controlling weeds. You need a field that is clean of weeds, because the presence of weeds, they are very vigorous, they are very fast. You might have noticed that soon after the rains, the first thing to come up are the weeds, and they grow very fast. They run towards flowering, and as soon as we have another flash of weeds, another flash is coming up, and the very presence of weeds in a field it means they are utilizing the nutrients or the fertilizer that is supposed to be used by your crop. So it is very important to eliminate those weeds so that all the fertilizer that is in the soil goes to your crop. So first of all, at planting, after the land has been prepared and the seed has been planted, you use pre-emergence herbicides. Pre-emergence herbicides, it means they are applied before the crop germinates, and it's very important that at the time of application the soil has got to be wet, because the herbicide is activated by moisture. If you apply the herbicide on a dry soil, you may not get very good results. And the pre-emergence herbicides we can talk about, for example, in maize you can use glyphosate, you can use atrazine, and there are many other herbicides that are available on the market. You can get advice from the shops or the dealers that sell the crop chemicals. So after the crop has germinated, you find that if you have applied the pre-emergent herbicides, your crop will germinate in a field that is free of weeds. But soon after it has started growing, and maybe some week or some few weeks after that, you see another flash of herbicides, weeds, coming up again. And those again, they need to be controlled. You then apply what we call post-emergent herbicides, the ones that are applied after a crop has emerged. And these ones, they will mop up all the weeds and every other plant that is not the crop of interest. In this case, we are talking about maize. So these post-emergence herbicides, they are selective herbicides. They will destroy or they will kill every other plant that is not maize, mostly. So that's very important, because weeds, they can actually reduce your yields in a very, very big way. And as farmers, we need to get the maximum. We need to do everything that increases the yield. So we look at the factors that can actually reduce yield, and weeds and it's very important. Weeds, they have got to be controlled in time. The longer they stay in the field, the longer they are growing, the more fertilizer they are actually taking away from the crop. So it's important that you do your weed control early enough so that they will not have utilized the majority of the fertilizer that is very important for the crop.
So the sixth one is pest control. Two common pests in maize production are the African maize stalk borer and the fall armyworm.
How can you see that your maize has been attacked by maize stalk borer? You will actually notice that your leaves that are emerging from the crop or from the plant are becoming perforated. And when you look, when you open it, you find that there is a caterpillar or even one or two caterpillars growing inside, and they are eating the stalk. They are eating the part of the maize that is growing. And that is a serious pest in maize that can actually drastically reduce your yield. And we need to control that. There are different chemicals on the market that can be used to control maize stalk borer. There is Dipterex, there is Ecoterex, and a lot of other chemicals like even Lambda can be used as a spray. There's also chemicals like Desi, they can be used as a spray. You can get to any shop that sells chemicals and ask them for a chemical that controls maize stalk borer. You will be able to get advice as to what is available and what can be useful. But it's very important to control maize stalk borer because it can reduce your yields drastically. It's not a good thing after all the hard labor. When you are supposed to get a ton and you get about 800 kilos, that's not good enough. So that pest control is an important thing. Obviously, maize stalk borer affects plants that are growing from as early as a week, even up to just before it flowering. So it's not a thing that you do just once. It is very important to keep checking your crop, we call it scouting, to keep scouting for the presence of maize stalk borer and then controlling on appearance.
Scouting for pests should be a regular practice for every farmer. On 1 hectare, inspect at least 100 plants. So if it's stalk borer, get the right pesticide. If it's fall armyworm, get the right pesticide. So farmers, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please remember to subscribe to our channel. We have more exciting episodes coming through. For questions, feedback, comments, we'd love to hear from you.